My name is Dr. Salahuddin, working as Associate Professor in Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology, Pharmacy Institute, Greater Noida. Today, I will discuss about the narcotic antagonist. In the previous lectures, I have already discussed about the narcotic analgesics, non-narcotic analgesics, and today I will discuss about the narcotic antagonist. So, first of all, the this narcotic antagonist, basically it is related with this opioid antagonist. These are the medicinal agents that act either by cancellation or the reverse most of the pharmacological effects of the morphine like substances. As we know that the morphine is act as a narcotic agonist or the narcotic analgesics. So, these narcotic antagonists, they are used in the treatment of the overdoses with the opioids, overdose of the morphine and the related substance. Here the nalorphine is the one drug act as a narcotic antagonist, and this drug was the first clinically used antagonist as the opioid antagonist, and this nalorphine was developed in 1943 having the competitive antagonist action at the mu receptor. Antagonist action at the mu receptor, as we know that the opioid receptors involved like mu, kappa and delta. So, this drug, that is nalorphine, is the competitive antagonist of the at the kappa receptors, and it is a antagonist of mu and kappa receptor both. So, it is a mixed opiate antagonist. Okay. So, here this nalorphine is first clinically used with agonist and the antagonist action at mu receptor and the kappa receptor with a different action. Now, this narcotic antagonist, now this narcotic antagonist we can divide into the antagonist like full antagonist and the agonist antagonist, both the mixed action we can say, agonist antagonist we can say the mixed action. So, first I will tell you about the full antagonist. In this full antagonist, this narcotic antagonist binds with this mu, kappa and delta opiate receptor with the affinity, but has no action effect on the receptor, that is the efficacy of these antagonists is 0. It includes naloxone, nalmefene and the naltrexone. These are the some example of the full antagonist. The naloxone antagonizes the action of the narcotic analgesic agonists. The nalmefene have this longer half life than the naloxone, and this naloxone have the half life that is 1 to 2 hours, and the nalmefene have the half life that is around 8 hours. Now, the naltrexone is a pure antagonist which is much longer acting than the naloxone, and the due to the special characteristics of this naltrexone, it can be given orally. Now, the agonist antagonist, the mixed action. So, this it binds to mu, kappa or delta, that these three receptors are the opiate receptor, but also have the potential agonist effect at kappa or the delta receptors. So, here this nalorphine, it includes nalorphine, pentazocine, butorphanol and buprenorphine, and this nalorphine has antagonistic action at the mu receptor. That means, it blocks the action of the mu receptors. The pentazocine is a weak antagonist, that means, it binds weakly at the mu receptor and moderate action at the kappa receptors. Now, the butorphanol, this butorphanol, it is the structure is similar to the pentazocine, but it is more potent and agonist at kappa receptor. So, here there is a more potent as agonist at the kappa receptor, because it these drugs like nalorphine, pentazocine, butorphanol and buprenorphine all are agonist and antagonistic action both. The next drug, that is buprenorphine, as agonist antagonist in the presence of morphine. It is greater affinity for the mu receptor, but the selective partial agonist and does not interact with kappa or delta receptors. Now, the mechanism of action of this narcotic antagonist, it acts centrally as well as peripherally. So, the centrally acting opiates receptor, these are, as we say, that this antagonist, and it binds with the receptor, and it is a potent competitive inhibitor with the highest affinity for the mu receptor. So, the competitive antagonism of the central mu receptor, it stimulates the respiratory drive, it increases alertness, it terminates analgesia and euphoria, and also causes mydriasis. The next thing is peripherally acting opioid antagonist. Some of the receptors are, some of the antagonists are centrally acting and some are peripherally acting. So, these peripherally acting opioid receptor antagonists do not readily cross the blood brain barrier, but are more potent competitive inhibitor at the same receptor, that is the mu receptor. So, this type of antagonism of this peripheral mu receptor, it can lead to the intestinal hypermotility. And there is some interesting studies that the 60% of the opioid analgesia originates from the peripheral opiates receptor, and that antagonizing through the pharmacological means may lead to acute pain crisis. Now, there are some important example of the narcotic antagonist, that the naloxone. Naloxone is a derivative of 14-hydroxy dihydromorphinone. It is a 14-hydroxy. How it is 14-hydroxy? Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So, at 14 position there is a 1 hydroxyl group is present. So, that is why it is a 14 hydroxy morphinone, and it was discovered in 1961, and it is a pure antagonist, not a mixed antagonist. It is so, here there is a one substitution at 14th position with NR. So, if R equals to CH2 CH double bond CH2, and if R equals to cyclopropyl methyl analog, that the structure, the name of this compound is naltrexone, cyclopropyl methyl with a longer acting antagonist. Next example is levolorphan and cyclorphan. When R equals to CH2 CH double bond CH2, it is the different from the previous one. Here there is a one linkage, epoxy linkage between 4 and 5, but here in this like levorphan and cyclorphan, there is a no epoxy linkage between this. Only the R group is present if R equals to CH2 CH double bond CH2 and cyclopropyl methyl cyclorphan. So, example is levolorphan and the cyclorphan. So, the analog derived from the 3 hydroxy morphinane, that is levorphan and cyclorphan, are the mixed agonist antagonist, mixed agonist antagonist at the opioid receptor. The another example of this narcotic antagonist, that is oxylorphan and butarphenol. So, here the structure is something different, and again cyclopropyl methyl and butorphenol is cyclobutyl methyl. Only here the cyclopropyl methyl, cyclobutyl methyl, then it includes the oxylorphan and the butarphenol, and here N-cyclopropyl methyl analog of 3,14 dihydroxymorphan, while butorphenol is cyclobutyl homolog. And if we consider the activity of these compound, the butorphenol is 4 to 10 times more active than the morphine and 50 to 70 times more active than pentazocine as an analgesics. If I am talking about the agonistic action, its antagonistic activity is 30 times than that of pentazocine, and it can thus considered as an ideal non-abusable and analgesic. Next example is nalorphine. So, this nalorphine, there is a one group attached here, that is the allyl group, 17 allyl 7,8 didehydro 1,4 epoxymorphine 3,60-diol hydrochloride. That the structure of this nalorphine, the IUPAC name, this is also a mixed agonist antagonist. This means it shows agonistic property and the agonistic property. So, it acts at 2 opioid receptor because it shows the agonistic action as well as the antagonistic action. So, at the mu receptor it has antagonistic effects, but if it binds with the kappa receptor, similarly it exerts the agonistic characteristics, that is the main characteristics of the nalorphine. And the use of the nalorphine includes opioid overdose, and the use of this nalorphine was started in the 1950s in a challenge test to determine the opioid dependence. and this nalorphine, that we can synthesize this nalorphine from the morphine. In the first step, as we know that this morphine have the two OH group, one is the phenolic hydroxyl group, another one is alcoholic hydroxyl group. So, acetylation both the hydroxyl group acetylated, upon the acetylation it will give diacetyl morphine. In the presence of cyanogen bromide, it will converted into the cyanodiacetyl morphine. This CH3 is converted into the CN. Now, with the help of the potassium hydroxide, again this OCOCH3 converted into the OH, and with the reaction with hydrochloric acid and the allyl bromide, this morphine finally converted into the nalorphine. Next is levolorphan. It is a opioid antagonist with properties similar to that of naloxone, and in addition it also possesses, it also shows the agonistic properties. So, levolorphan antagonizes opioid effects by competing with the same receptor, that is the mu and kappa receptors. It also acts on the opioid receptor, that is the mu receptor, and it also acts on the nicotinic receptor alpha 1 as well as alpha 3 alpha 2 as well as the alpha 3 receptors. Next is the levolorphan as the opioid antagonist, at the properties is similar to the naloxone, and it is used to treat the drug overdose. What is the difference? Differ from the naloxone, it also possesses same some agonistic properties as compared to the naloxone. So, it is an analog of the levolorphan that counteracts the action of narcotic analgesics as such as the morphine. As I have already told you that these are used in the opioid overdoses. So, and the specific use of this levolorphan especially in the treatment of respiratory depression, sedation, respiratory depression, the narcotic overdoses, and it prevents or reverses the effects of opiates, including respiratory depression, the sedation and the hypotension. And it also can reverse the psychomimetic and the dysphoric effects of the antagonist as that of pentazocine. Next is naloxone. Naloxone is the opioid antagonist, and it is used in IV in emergency cases or in emergency situation to reverse the respiratory depression. And why this respiratory depression? Due to the overdose of the narcotic analgesics like morphine, heroin and some other related narcotic analgesics with the morphine. So, what we will what naloxone do? This naloxone is acts by reversing the action of the opioid analgesics by binding with the same receptors. in the central nervous system and inhibit the action shown by the opioid analgesic, because it will blocks the action of the opioid receptor. And if the property included here, this naloxone is a synthetic morphinane alkaloids, that is the morphinone. The enone double bond has been reduced to a single bond, that the hydrogen at the position 14. So, this is the position 14 has been replaced by the hydroxyl group, and the methyl group attached to the nitrogen has been replaced by an allyl group. So, here this naloxone is a synthetic morphinane alkaloid. Next, this naloxone is the specific opioid antagonist, commonly as its hydrochloride salt, and naloxone hydrochloride, and it reverses the effects of opioid. Whatever the effects shown by the opioids, it will antagonist its effects. It is a role, it has a role as a mu opioid receptor antagonist, a central nervous system depressant. An antidote to the opioid poisoning, it is used in opioid poisoning. It is an organic heteropentacyclic compound. Heteropentacyclic compound, what is the name of heteropentacyclic compound? That is the morphinane, and have the tertiary alcohol, and it is a conjugate base of naloxone, the dextrorotatory naloxone. It derives from a hydride of a morphinane. If I am talking about the structure activity relationship, the interesting structure activity relationship of this naloxone. So, first we have to tell about the structure of this naloxone. I have already told you that the naloxone have this OH group at the phenyl, that is the phenolic OH. So, if we replace this phenolic OH into OCH3, OC2H5, when we replace this one, it makes the drug, that is the less analgesic and cough suppression. The next is the replacement of alcoholic hydroxyl group with OCH3 makes the compound 5 times more potent, means more active. Next is the replacement of alcoholic hydroxyl group with OCOCH3 will also activate the compound by 4.2 times. Again the replacement of the alcoholic hydroxyl group with the ketone group inactivates the compounds with the less active compound. So, there are several replacement that we can do. We can do the hydrogenation of the alicyclic unsaturated linkage, that means this linkage. So, the activity increases 1.2 times. On the replacement of the methyl group from the tertiary nitrogen, where is the tertiary nitrogen? That this is the tertiary nitrogen, that it decreases the activity. So, on replacement of the N-methyl group by CH2 phenyl, that is the phenyl ethyl, it increases the activity by 14 times. So, there are the several, or we can do the several replacement of the different types of functional group present on the structure, that is by taking the reference, that is the naloxone, that the activity may increase or decreases. And this is the synthesis that the naloxone, that the narcotic antagonist, that we can synthesize this naloxone from 14 hydroxy dihydronormorphinane by the reaction with the 3 bromopropene 1, that we can synthesize easily this naloxone, that is the synthetic analog of the narcotic antagonist. These are the some references that I have followed. Thank you so much.